Gary, how are you?
Oh, not bad. How are you?
Good. I like your background.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, it's a law library. WashU in St. Louis, the School of Law there.
Oh, nice. Right. And I noticed I was peeking on your website there, and I noticed that you are from the Missouri area.
Born and raised Ozark Mountains, Southern Missouri. Yes.
Awesome. Okay. And then spent some time in St. Louis, right? For undergrad,
Oh,
was that?
no, for law school. Went to
Oh,
law
for law
school at
school.
Washington University School of Law. Yep.
That was Washington. It wasn't the
Correct.
state of Washington. Okay. That was the name of the school.
Washington University in St. Louis.
Got it. Okay. Excellent. And then, so to cut to the chase, Gary, you've been in business, it says on your website 17 years, but has it been longer than that now?
It has been. We always need to update our websites, right?
Of course.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
why
No,
I'm asking.
geez. I've been licensed as a lawyer in Michigan since 1995. Been in my current practice with Rosi and Gardner, it is just me now. Phil Rosi retired,
Okay.
um, but been there since 2001,
Okay.
so 22-ish years. Yeah.
And have you evolved into the divorce? And that's what we're going to talk about today. But have you done everything and then kind of decided to go in that direction?
In varying degrees, I've done some divorce since within months after I was licensed to practice law in Michigan. So the quantities kind of ebbed and flowed over time. And yes, I've decided in recent years that I don't handle any contested or in court divorce work anymore. I'm only doing what I'm calling alternative divorce practices, an alternative divorce practice. So that's collaborative law, uncontested divorces, and divorce mediation work.
Excellent. And we got notes on that. We'll get into that in a second. Other than that, like personally, I see that you love to bike and stuff, and you got some kids. They're probably all grown now, right?
Oh, kids are grown and out. Yeah. Yeah, 27 and 20, soon to be 25. One in Michigan, one not. Yeah, it's an empty nest at home. Yeah, fairly active, like to hike, like to travel, like to get my feet on the ground and see new places. Yeah, geez, just started building a wooden kayak from a kit with my wife. We're working on that. So I do like to get on the water as well, which Traverse City is a beautiful spot to do that.
Surely is. Surely is. So let's get down to it. You've got a ton of things that you've done in the past, and just so I'm educated, it says that you admitted to a bunch of courts. What does that exactly mean? That you've presented cases to those places?
I have or am authorized to. So yes, both Eastern and Western districts, the federal courts in Michigan. So Western District is our side of the state, the west side of the state, plus all the UP. Eastern District is eastern part, which of course encompasses Detroit. So yeah, I can appear in those courts. I can appear in the bankruptcy courts, which are federal courts. Also, all state courts in Michigan. The Federal Court of Appeals for the Sixth Circuit. That's what covers our area, along with Ohio, Indiana, some other states. I have appeared down in the Sixth Circuit for a case, argued a case there. So yeah, and then a number of tribal courts actually in Michigan. I'm admitted to practice before.
Excellent. You can start a lot of people, basically, is what that means.
Correct.
That's great. That is why. And that's good because I'm interviewing you because I've run into so many people that need your services, and I really like how unique it is. And with that being said, let's get right into it. I've been through a divorce myself, unfortunately, and how awful it is. Um, and what I like to do is just kind of walk people through some of the questions they're going to have. And first of all, what if a couple wants to get divorced and they don't want to lawyer up?
Great question. And it is possible. It certainly is possible for them to do their own divorce. So people talk about a kitchen table divorce, especially if you don't have minor kids. If you have minor kids, it's really tough because there's a lot more forms and legal requirements you have to jump through to get the court's approval, friend of the court's approval, at least initially. But if you don't have kids, or if you just want to solve the property issues, property and debt issues between yourselves, you can do that. You can do it if you can't work it out, or you don't know how things might be divided fairly, might want to engage a mediator. I do that work. I'm sometimes hired privately by couples to serve as a neutral mediator for them. We can conduct it by Zoom. It's private, and can give them some guidance on how some other parties have done it in the past.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
This is awesome. And then, so from layman's person point of view, what are divorce terms, would you say? Like, how would you divide those up?
Great question. Yeah, you have to, you want to make sure you're dividing everything. So all debts, all assets, retirement assets, real estate, vehicles, bank accounts, health savings accounts, investment accounts, credit card debt, mortgages, vehicle loans, all of it. You have to do all of it when you're divorcing, because you're creating separate lives now, right? So you have to do that financially too. So a mediator can help you make sure you cover all those bases. A lot of people ask, hey, look, do we have to, so we just said we'd have to sell everything and divide it, right? And that you do not have to sell everything. In fact, there are a lot of things that you don't want to cash out or liquidate, like retirement accounts. So unless you're of retirement age, you're going to take a big hit by cashing out retirement accounts. So there are ways with some legal tools that you can divide those retirement accounts, shift part of it to the other spouse, without taking the tax hit that you would take if you cashed it out and divided it.
Cool. And we got property, and then that's how those debts are divided. And then, so how do you know you're getting like an okay deal? Like, what if how do you know as just a layman's person? And how do I trust you to know that you're gonna get that's the case?
Well, yeah, and my job as a mediator, and that's one of the roles that I play in divorce. It's not the only role. But if I'm your mediator, I'm not giving advice to either spouse on what's a fair deal, what's a good deal, or the like. My job as the mediator is just to make sure that you're covering everything, to make sure that you have a complete agreement. In that sort of a forum, people should know they can always hire or talk to what we call consulting counsel. So there are a number of attorneys in the area who would meet with you and talk about divorce terms and tell you whether that's an okay deal, or no, you're getting taken, or you're taking advantage of your spouse on those sorts of terms. And you can pay them for a couple, 3 hours of their time to do that. And I tell parties that I'm the mediator for it. They always should consider doing that before they sign a deal, just to make sure. There are things like spousal support, what people in the past have called alimony, that are complicated, hard to predict, hard to know what you should or shouldn't do in that regard. And that's particularly the times you may want to consult with an attorney, consulting counsel, or the like.
Okay, great question though, right? How would you know?
Well, right. And if you hire me as your collaborative attorney, or you hire me to represent you in an uncontested, or what Michigan court rules call summary divorce, then I would be advising, I could advise you of, yes, this is a good deal. No, this is not a good deal. A court might give you more in this realm, but less in that column, that sort of thing. Collaborative, if you hired me as collaborative counsel, collaborative divorce is a whole different creature. A lot of people think because you use the word collaborative, it just means you agree to play nice, right? You're not going to yell and scream at each other, but it's much more than that. Collaborative is an agreement to use an out-of-court process to arrive at those terms, to decide who's going to keep the house and usually take the mortgage that is on it, who's going to get any other real estate, or who's going to keep the business, or how much you might have to pay out over time in terms of property settlement to keep the business. If you own a practice, or you own part of a practice, you're a veterinarian or physician, you can't, your spouse, your soon to be ex-spouse, can't own part of that practice, right? But if there's a certain value in that practice, then maybe you'd have to pay out part of that value over time to your spouse. It gets complicated, but yeah, but that is one of the things that collaborative divorce is just so beautiful for. Both parties are committing to use an out-of-court process. They're saying, look, we don't know what our divorce terms are. We don't know what that looks like, but we're committing that we're going to each hire a collaborative attorney, team of other professionals as we need them, to figure this out outside of court. We're not going to go into court and try to take advantage of the other, or try to take the other one for everything he or she is worth. We're going to do this in a more civil manner. We're going to commit those attorneys, commit that they won't represent either spouse in litigation in a traditional divorce. If that process breaks down, both spouses commit to full and open disclosure. So look, we're not going to have to go through discovery. I'm not going to hide assets. We're going to put everything on the table. We're going to figure out, sitting around that table, how we're going to divide it in a way that both of us can live with, so we can go our separate ways.
Interesting. You've probably seen a lot of scenarios, I bet, in your day.
I have. We've seen a lot of things that, it doesn't mean committing to collaborative or divorce doesn't mean that you're not going to have hard conversations, not going to have hard meetings, because this is hard stuff and it's emotional stuff, right?
Especially if there's kids involved, right?
Yeah. And if there's kids involved, all the more reason to use collaborative divorce, because although you may have some hard conversations, you're still going to be able to talk to your co-parent, right? Because they're going to remain your co-parent, even though they're your ex-wife or husband. They're going to remain your co-parent after you complete this process. So if you can communicate with them in a civil way, in a respectful manner, and figure it out between yourselves with some guidance from collaboratively trained attorneys, then you're going to be able to continue to communicate. You're going to be able to do things like be at graduation, and be within striking distance of each other and not have a problem. Right. You're going to be able to be at the hospital together when your grandchildren are born,
for the kids.
Yes. Yeah. It's because you communicate throughout the process. You're going to be able to communicate after you complete the process, which is so important where you have kids.
No question about it. And as for someone who's been through it, so important. Someone said to me, if you have a child with someone, you're never divorced.
In many ways, that's true. Because they're always going to remain your child, right? And their life events, whatever those are, marriage or not, graduation from high school, from college, master's degree, or birth of grandkids,
Yeah, like you just said. Yeah, exactly.
life events, you're going to want to be there and be part of their lives.
Excellent. Gary, you've been awesome to just carve out some time to do this for us. Is there anything else that you would offer as advice if someone was contemplating a divorce? That's what you've already went through.
Well, as I said, collaborative divorce, it can be an involved process. It can involve other professionals, can involve a financial neutral, often an accountant or a CPA.
Or a mortgage guy.
Or a mortgage guy.
Sometimes it is, sometimes it comes from me.
Yeah.
To you, because they're trying to figure that out. So
yeah. And oftentimes, oftentimes you've got the house is the chief asset, right? And they're trying to figure out, all right, if one of us can keep it, or how do we divide the equity in it, right? If that's your biggest asset, and it often is, how do you divide that? Well, that's Dave's business. How do you figure out how to get that out, or leave it in there, but get the spouse some compensation, refinance, or compensation in another column, as we sometimes say, from another asset. There are simpler processes. If you've got a simpler case, if you have sat down with your spouse at the kitchen table and said, look, here's how things are divvying up, and both of you are okay with that, but you need someone to help write it up, get it through the court, because in Michigan you still do need court approval. Ultimately it's the court that decrees you divorced and the bonds of matrimony severed, right? So but there's a process under the court rules now where you can file what the courts are calling a summary divorce in Michigan. So if someone has written it up for you, you can both file a petition that says, hey, we want to be divorced. You both sign it. And by the way, judge, here's our agreement. And if that's a complete agreement, look, judge, we've already done your work for you with the help of lawyer. If that's a complete agreement, then you can file it with the court, ask the court to give you a hearing date in about 60 days, your first available hearing date. You show up, it's like once your case is called, truly, it's about a 5-minute hearing. And this is with no kids again, but, and confirms that that's your agreement. And yep, you want to be divorced, take the testimony. And this can happen via Zoom, and you're done, you're divorced. So if your case is simpler, there is a simple process for that as well. So there's a couple of alternative divorce processes. There's collaborative, if you don't know your terms. There's summary divorce, if you know your terms, but you just need some help writing it up. And there's mediated divorce, if you just need that third party neutral, with or without consulting counsel. Sort of the three categories for alternative divorce processes in Michigan.
I saw that on your website, so they can go to your website. Why don't you tell them how they get there?
ROSIGARDNER.com. That's Rosi Gardner, all one word. ROSIGARDNER.com.
And I'm going to put it in the comments below too, if anybody needs to just link through there, and then they can get your phone number from that point too. You have a normal intake process, they'll call your receptionist and all that good stuff.
Correct. Yep.
Great. Excellent, Gary. I appreciate your time. This has been excellent for me to be able to serve people in a way that will save you time, hopefully, and before you get the calls.
Well, yeah, and just, yeah. The getting through the courts these days is extremely slow, extremely difficult, emotionally taxing, and expensive. And there are alternatives. So I want to make sure people know that.
I'll remember that to lead in.
Right.
Have a great day, and we'll catch up later after we get done with the call and later on this week.
All right, sounds good.
Other than that, have a good cherry festival.
Thanks, Dave.
Okay, thanks, Gary. Talk to you soon.